everyone, it's Mary. Welcome back to my channel. I'm chilling in the car again because I was batch recording a couple of videos for you guys today. And today we're going to talk about my self-publishing nightmare story. So I told you guys I would try to do like one video a week during Vlogmas about writing, which you may or may not care about, and that's okay. So this is my weekly contribution to writing. Still got the dollar store headphones going. It's all good. Anyway, so I like to talk about this. I've talked about this several times. I actually had a video about this up a while ago, and I deleted it because I was trying to rebrand my channel. Whole thing. So I've talked about this before. If you've been following me for a while, you're like, we already heard this story. Just humor me here, okay? Humor me here. I'm redoing the story at another video so that other people can hear my horror story and hopefully learn from my mistake. Now, first of all, I've always loved writing. I started writing stories when I was a little girl. I started writing fan fiction as a little girl, which I didn't know it was fan fiction, but I would read a book and be like, I don't like the way that book ended. And then I would sit down with my notebook and I would rewrite the ending so that the ending turned out the way I wanted it to. And I realized when I got a little older that I was writing fan fiction, but I didn't know it was called fan fiction. I was like 11. So anyway, that's how I started writing. I loved writing stories. I was always coming up with, I actually would do storyboards, although again, as a little girl, I didn't know what they were called. So I would come up with a story in my head, come up with character names in my head, and then when my mom and dad got the Sunday paper in on Sunday, I would look through the sale ads and I would cut out pictures of who my people were. So like, I'd be like, this is the mom and she's the Target ad, and I would cut her out and put her on paper. And then I would be like, and this is the dad, and I would put him on paper. And this is their dog, and I would put the dog. And I was like making a storyboard, and I didn't know it was a storyboard. But anyway, so I've always loved writing. I've always loved telling stories. So when I was in college, I started writing actual books, and I would type them up on my computer and just save them, and no one ever saw them. When about 2006, 2007 was when I finally started posting them online via, was it LiveJournal? LiveJournal. Remember LiveJournal? And a couple of message boards back in the day where you could write short pieces. And I did a few pieces on fanfiction.net back in the day. But when I really started, I want to write a book and actually publish the book, was early 2010s, 2009, 2010, 2011. So around this time was when self-publishing became a thing, right? So suddenly you could publish through CreateSpace, and suddenly you could publish through Smashwords, and suddenly Kindle, Amazon, sorry guys, I still have my cold, but anyway, suddenly Amazon would allow you to self-publish a book. So I was like, this is it, I'm going to release my story as a book. But I didn't know anything about publishing, and boy, did I make some mistakes. I made some mistakes. Back in the day, this was why self-publishing back in the day had such a bad rap, because I was one of many people who would write a story, put it online, put a crappy cover on it, and call it a story and try to sell it. And people would be like, this is terrible. And guess what? They were right. It was terrible. And that's why for a long time, if you told somebody you were like a self-published author, you were like the dirt on the bottom of their shoe, because there was just such a bad rap involved in self-publishing. And unfortunately, I'm part of the reason why that exists. So the first mistake I made was with the whole editing process. So first of all, I didn't really get a content editor at all. I wrote my book, I wrote the story the way it was, and I just was like, okay, there it is. It's always important to have someone who is a beta reader who can say, that scene doesn't make sense, or that character needs to be doesn't make sense, or this whole thing that happened, can you explain it in more detail? There should always be someone you're running your book through that can tell you, hey, I didn't like this needs to be explained more, this needs more detail, whatever. I forget what there's all kinds of different editors, but whoever would do that, right? Like editing content. And then once that is all wrapped up, you should have someone editing for like grammar mistakes and stuff. And then of course, someone who can help you edit and format to put it up for Kindle. Sometimes you can do the editing and formatting for Kindle yourself, but long story short, there should be people involved in the editing process. I never got a content editor, anybody to look at my actual story, or beta reader. No one who actually looked at the story, didn't exist, didn't even do it. As far as the grammar editing goes, I won an editor off of a contest. The problem is the editor was a college student doing the college newspaper from one of the Indianapolis colleges. He made a couple of mistakes in that he sent me back the file that was supposed to be the fully edited file, but was actually the file with the editing marks on it, not the final copy of the file. And Dum here didn't check it. So here we go, release day, my very first book, The Wild Side, and I open up my Kindle and I upload it. Mistake number one was I uploaded the wrong file, right? Because I didn't realize he gave me the one with the editing marks. So I uploaded the edited, with edited marks, manuscript to Kindle. What the heck? I immediately realized what I did. I was like, oh no! Tried to pull it down, but back in the day, Kindle had like a 3 to 5 day window. I think they still have a window where they would process your file, so you couldn't even get it down or change it until that was done. So there I have the wrong version of my book. And at this point, I've told all my friends, all my coworkers. I had a countdown to The Wild Side on my little author Facebook page that I used to have. Everybody knew this book was coming out, and so everybody downloaded the wrong book with the wrong file. I was mortified. I was so embarrassed, especially when I had a friend who like messaged me and she's like, everything is spelled wrong on this. She's like, there's a bunch of things that are wrong and like sentences that don't make sense in your book. And she was kind of like happy because she was gloating, right, that it was wrong. And I was so hurt about it. I was like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. So it took me like almost a week and a half to get that file down and the right file up. So at this point, all my friends have pre-ordered this book, and not pre-ordered, but because you couldn't pre-order back then, have ordered this book, and it's wrong. I was a little embarrassed. Right? So that was the first thing. Second thing was, nobody really paid attention to cover art for self-published authors back then. You had a cover creator, which actually still exists, but the one that we had back in 2011 was more basic than the one we have now, believe it or not. And it was the most basic cover you could possibly imagine. No one cared about like the color aesthetic. Does the cover make sense with the book? You know, does it look like a paranormal romance? No, it did not. It was the ugliest cover. I will actually just post a picture of my original cover up here. I bought art off of like a photo stock website, so I've had enough sense to buy like a photo that I could actually use and get like, you know, the license to use. So I was smart enough to not get in trouble with like photo copyright. But then I had like the ebook cover, which I'll post up here. And then I had the print cover, because Create Space, you had to use their cover creator. So I had this ugly cover for the Create Space. So like the cover was atrocious, right? So here I am against all these like popular paranormal romance authors of the day, and I've got that going on with a wrong file. And at this point, it was just embarrassing as all get out, right? So the book obviously didn't get very good reviews. I didn't sell, first of all, I didn't sell very many copies of it. I sold like maybe 10 copies of it. And of the 10 copies of it I sold, I got 2 or 3 terrible reviews. So I finally was like, well, this sucks. Updated the cover and put the book for free. That was my first book. The second book, I was really depressed when my mom passed away, and I decided to write a book for her called Lessons My Mother Taught Me. It's a memoir, and I was like, I'm going to try this again. I'm going to put valiant effort into it. I'm going to get editors. I'm going to write it. The problem was I was not in the headspace to really write my mom's story in the way that it needed to be written. And so I spent the time getting like a good cover. Like I actually got a cover created, even though I look at it now, it's still a very basic cover. But I got a cover created. This was slightly better, like slightly better, but not really. And I was proud of my book. I put out a press release for it, and actually sent it out to local papers. I had a couple articles in the newspaper, which I can, again, put links below or screenshots. I was in the newspaper with this book. did a spot with the American Diabetes Association. My mother passed away due to complications from diabetes. I made it on the news. I got a part of the diabetes walk. I had a little segment about me and my dad on the diabetes walk. It was a big deal. And then I look back at my book and I'm like, it wasn't a good book because I did not get an editor. I did not get an editor who would have told me at the time that your book is good, but you need to explain more. So one of the things wrong with Mom's book, I'm hitting my console, sorry. One of the things wrong with Mom's book is there's no emotional depth to it. I tell about her life very factual. It's like you're reading a Wikipedia page. Literally, the only chapter in the entire book is the ending chapter where I talk about her passing away, where I actually put personal stories and how I was feeling. The rest of her book literally reads like a Wikipedia page, and I was so worried about not offending people that it was so factual that it's really not all that enjoyable to read. It's not honoring my mother, and so I pulled it down a few years ago thinking that I would redo the book, and I just haven't redone it yet. So that book was a dud. And then I moved to Virginia. So the next book came out in I think 2014 or no, 2015. It came out in 2015. It was called A Summer Wish. And I loved that story. It was just a short, fun story that I wrote, and I enjoyed it so much that I put it up on Amazon, and I sold a total of 0 copies. Now, this book was different. I ran it through an editor. I got a cover designed for it. I did all the things I should have done, but I didn't do any promotion. So I did no promoting, at all, and I really at that point had lost my following with 2 crappy first books. So I guess to sum it up is if you're thinking about self-publishing or indie publishing as they call it now it's like I'm an indie author. Like back then you were just a self-published nightmare. But anyway, I'm indie publishing, right? The successful indie authors are the ones that do all the right things. So I'm going to run through a quick checklist here of things you should do. And the reason why I'm running through this checklist is because, I hate to say it, but I'm pretty sure that me writing under my name, writing under the Mary Ellen Quigley name, might be shot in the dark. I don't have a good reputation under my actual name. I've actually gone, I've gone back and forth on whether or not I need to write under a pen name going forward. I may, because I feel like I just have such a bad reputation for mistakes I've made back in the day. So we'll see. But long story short, here's my checklist of things that you should avoid if you are going to self-publish. And these are things that indie published authors do. And that's why you have people like, Sophie Lark, who's an indie published author, who is doing so well because she does these things. First of all, get an editor. Get an editor. Edit your book. Look, I understand that editing is expensive, but even if it's just if all else fails, find a friend or a beta reader. Because you can sometimes, if you're in writing critique groups, find a free beta reader. Have someone read the book. Just have someone read the book and give you, not your friend, not your cousin, someone you don't know that well, have them read your book and give you an honest opinion. Be brutal and have it be like, even if it is a friend, but I need you to be brutal. If it doesn't make sense, let me know. And just have them be honest. That's why sometimes it's better to do a writing critique group if you can find one, because they will be brutal. You need someone to look at your book, and yeah, it might sting a little, but you need them to be honest about that doesn't make sense, that doesn't work, that scene isn't needed, that scene is great, but needs XYZ. Or they'll tell you, hey, this is what I like about your book, and this is why it's good. Because if you also know what you did wrong, but also what you did right, then you know how to do that again in the future. So get an editor, and then for the love of a God and all things holy, spell check. Get an actual editor. Get someone who checks your grammar. There is nothing worse. I read a book the other day. I downloaded it. I kid you not, on the first page was an obvious typo. An obvious typo. It was the right word, but the wrong spelling of that word. You know how some words in English will have, like, it's the same word, but they're spelled two different ways? It was one of those. And I'm like, that is an obvious mistake that an editor would have caught, and it's literally within the first 5 sentences of your book. I was like, holy, you know what I mean? Like, come on. So edit the book. Get feedback on your book before you release it to the public, because if you release it to the public, the public will be honest with you. Part 2, get a cover that doesn't look like crap. Cover creators on Amazon are a nice tool to use, but you need to create your own cover. That does not mean that you have to spend a lot of money on cover. Things like Canva, you can use a lot of things on Canva and make your own cover. Now, you got to watch pictures, and you got to watch copyright on pictures and make sure you have the appropriate licenses. So you want to get either something that's free in the Creative Commons, or you want to buy stock photos, but you need to have a cover that looks like it makes sense. Research. Get on Amazon and look up paranormal romance, or look up science fiction romance, or look up thrillers or mysteries, and what do the covers look like, and try to replicate that, right? How do I not copy, but how do I get the same feel, right? So for example, paranormal romances tend to be, they are darker covers, they have a lot of blues and purples in them. If it's like wolf romance, if you're doing just shifter romances, there's a wolf on the cover somewhere. If there's a vampire romance, there's usually some dark-haired, crazy-looking man on the cover. Whatever. If it's a romance novel, have a couple kissing, whatever. Try to get the feel of what your book is and create a cover that makes sense. Don't do just a standard, cover creator thing that doesn't look good. And then lastly, and most importantly, you need to promote your book, because I would get so disheartened that my book wasn't selling, but nobody knew it was selling. I never promoted. I didn't do ads. Now, this is money. There are ways to promote for cheap. You just have to research. There are lots of Facebook groups on Facebook. I was going to say Facebook groups on Amazon, which makes no sense. There are Facebook groups on Facebook. There are YouTube videos about this. Google how to promote your books on YouTube. There are tons of self-published or indie published authors who have a multitude of information that you can use, but you have to promote, because if you don't promote, no one knows your book is there. Even if you get traditionally published, like if you get trade published, nowadays it's not like it was. You don't just get randomly stuck. They stick your book in Barnes and Nobles and somebody picks it up. You still have to promote, because you're competing with some big named authors. So one thing you need to learn is how to promote. So those are my 3 big tips. I don't know. I probably will self-publish in the future, but I've learned what not to do. That's my self-publishing nightmare. I don't want to say I've ruined my name as an author, because I don't think I've ruined my name as an author, but I also feel like it's going to be very much an uphill battle to overcome the mistakes that were made. So I do think I'm probably going to have to write under a pen name. But yeah, that's my self-publishing nightmare. Have you self-published? And if you have, what is going on? Popo. Anyway, have you self-published? And if you have, what kind of mistakes or lessons did you learn along the way? All right, guys. Sorry for the noisy rain. I will talk to you all later. See you the next day for Vlogmas. Bye, guys.